Last time on The Piggy Gamer, we met Groose and other NPCs and found out that our loftwing is trapped near the waterfall. With this new info, we can finally go find our bird. As Pippet suggested on the last episode, we should get a sword first for self-defense. The Knight Commander, Aegis, will tell you to get the practice sword from a chest in the back room. The chest is illogically elaborate for a common practice sword, but Nintendo logic aside, the animation for opening a chest is pretty solid. The tune isn't new, but it still conveys the excitement of finding out what you got, like a kid on Christmas morning. If the setting seems familiar, that's probably because this segment is reminiscent of the training dojo in Majora's Mask, as both were places to practice sword techniques with practice logs. In the Wii version of Twilight Princess, you had quote-unquote motion controls. You shook the Wiimote and Link swung his sword. In this time, thanks to the Wii Motion Plus, there are real motion controls. If you swing your sword up, Link will swing up. If you thrust, Link will thrust. Even if you turn your Wiimote sideways, Link will actually turn the hilt of his sword to match your Wiimote's actions. Let's start with the thrust. This is by far the most awkward move. When I thrust the Wiimote forward, I have to situate myself so I can do it properly. Sometimes the Wiimote just doesn't register the thrust and does something else, but it works about 80% of the time for me. I know a lot of people have trouble with the sword's motion controls, but for me personally, I don't have much trouble with anything else. The important thing here is to take your time. Most enemies in this game give you a few seconds to hit them at the right angle, so don't rush. Two moves don't directly correspond to actions on the screen, and I'm very glad they don't. You do the spin attack by shaking the nunchuck and Wiimote side to side for a horizontal and up and down for a vertical, as opposed to actually spinning in a circle. This move will drain your stamina meter very quickly, but it prevents the player from constantly spamming the most powerful move, and instead using other moves more strategically. You do the final blow by making a sharp downward motion with both the nunchuck and Wiimote, not unlike the vertical spin attack. Final blows have always felt very satisfying in Zelda, but striking your fist down and seeing that translate into Link striking his blade down into his enemies makes Skyward Sword's final blow the most satisfying in the entire series. However, I haven't played this game in years, so we'll see how well I'll be able to implement these sword skills when I'm not just hitting wooden poles. After convincing Aegis to let you leave with the practice sword, you'll be interrupted by a talking Sheikah Stone, who says that it will give you tips on how to get past certain parts of the game. This concept was first introduced in Ocarina of Time 3D, and I don't have a big problem with it. Other than this one time, you never have to bother with it if you don't want to. However, because of the inconvenient placing of it, I wouldn't say this would be a superior method to simply looking up a walkthrough. It doesn't detract from the game, but it doesn't add anything either. With everything now out of the way, we can finally make our way to the waterfall cave. There are two new enemies in here, Keese and Choo-Choos. Keese are the same as they've always been in Zelda games, the lowest of enemies that provide nothing more than a slight distraction. The only strategy I can think of here is that you have to swing high to hit them, but does that even count as a strategy? The other enemy is the Choo-Choo, who is slightly more competent. Not much, though. It can hurt you if you step in it, and you'll have to wiggle the nunchuck and Wiimote to get out. It's gimmicky, sure, but it makes sense that this is what would likely happen if you stepped in a Choo-Choo, and hey, it gives the cave a little difficulty. Kinda. That's not to say that the cave should be difficult. It's the beginning of the game, and the difficulty is appropriate for this early on. There was one tricky part of the cave, however. There's a chest on a ledge that you might not know how to reach unless you pay attention to your surroundings and jump from an adjacent ledge to it. The cave itself is very serene, with the soothing music, glistening cave walls, and calm lighting. It's just a shame that there isn't much to do in it. Once you make it out of the cave, you'll be greeted by Zelda. She seems to be hearing a voice calling for her. This is the first sign that you probably won't be playing through a high school drama for much longer. After the cutscene, she will actually walk with you for the great distance of 5 seconds. My theory is that one of the developers programmed Zelda's walking animation, but couldn't find a great way to implement it, so they just shoehorned it in here. Link's bird is boarded up in a hole in the cave. You have to hit the ropes at the right angle with your sword, which is the first real time when you have to use precise swings outside of the training room. I think it's clever how the game gives you enemies that don't need to be hit with precise angles, but gives you puzzles which require them, essentially preparing you for when the two are combined and you have to attack enemies at certain angles. Once the bird is free, a cutscene will play showing Link being reunited with his loftwing. I can't help but smile as Link's face lights up when he sees his loftwing. Guy Pora wasn't lying when he said that Link and his loftwing share a very strong bond. Although, it does make me wonder, if Link and his loftwing have such a strong bond, why doesn't his loftwing have a name? It's not a major complaint, but I just find it a little odd that Link wouldn't have a name for a companion he cares so deeply for. Zelda admits that she has been hearing voices calling out to her. She goes on saying that she believes that there is a surface beneath the cloud barrier far more vast than in Skyloft, and that she wants to explore it one day. The fact that Zelda feels fine telling Link this without fear that she'll be doubted conveys how close the two are far more than any exposition ever could. But wait, we don't have time for character development, we need to get to the wing ceremony. On our way there, we can learn the tutorial for flying a loftwing. In my opinion, flying is incredibly fluid in this game. The controls work the way wings would work on an actual bird. You tilt left and right to go in that direction, you tilt downwards to do a nosedive, and you flap up and down to gain altitude. While flapping the Wiimote up and down might seem awkward to some, it felt incredibly natural to me, much more so than the sword controls. Now, on to the ceremony. The gameplay part of this game has finally started. So here's the question, is it good? A large majority would respond in a loud, resounding no. But I'm not so sure. By itself, I feel like the sword and bird controls work very well. Swinging the Wiimote around feels like swinging a sword, and the controls for the loftwing make me feel like I'm flying. Of course, this is all subjective. Just because I like the controls does not make you wrong for not liking them. We simply have different tastes. However, just because we've been introduced to the controls does not mean that I can give a final verdict. Think about it this way. In Spider-Man, the web-swinging controls could work perfectly, but none of that would matter if the game took place in the middle of the desert, because there would be nothing to swing onto. Likewise, the controls can be absolutely perfect and still not make an enjoyable experience if they're implemented poorly. We did get to see a little bit of how swordplay is implemented in the waterfall cave, but it isn't nearly enough to get the full picture. And we literally haven't done any flying outside of the tutorial. In order for me to fully evaluate how good the motion controls are, I need to see more of the game. And in the next episode, we will see how well flying is implemented in the wing ceremony. But what do you think? Do the motion controls suck? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more episodes of this review series, hit that subscribe button. Bye!